Hi, I'm Corjo Humphreys, or WeCJ, and welcome to Commander class. In today's class, we will be talking about tap lands. Now, people that have played this game for years are probably going to be like, this is a long video. However, when it comes to tap lands, there's different variations of tap lands. However, in this one, I will just be going over the basics of tap lands, and even then, it is still probably longer than most of the land episodes. However, it's still probably going to be like 10-20 minutes overall. You'll probably see by the timeline underneath. So for the new players, you're probably wondering what a tap land is. So majority of the time, a tap land is a land that taps for 2 or 3 or multiple colors or all colors. However, on the first turn you play, it enters tapped, which means you're not really going to be able to use it on your first turn unless you have a way to have cards enter untapped, which is very far and few between. There is ways around it. The main reason these tap lands are very important when it comes to Magic the Gathering is because it does mana fixing, and mana fixing is one of those things where if you have cards in your hand that are multiple colors and you need a white pip, or a blue pip, or depending on what pip you need, you're able to play this land and then on the next turn be able to play the card. However, it's one of those things where if you have a 2, 3, 4 or 5 colored deck and in turn 1 you played a tap land, that gives you the color of a land you do not have in your hand, and then on turn 2 you can play another land and be able to cast a spell. It was really good that you had that dual tap land because you needed that color and you didn't have it in your hand. So that's what dual lands and tap lands and tri lands are usually used for, to try and get all the color pips you need for your deck. So when it comes to the basic tap lands, there are 7 in total. So the original ones are the dual tap lands, and there are thriving lands, snow lands, artifact lands, basic tap lands, triple tap lands, and then life gain tap lands. When it comes to these, some of them have 2 versions of them, one in an older set where they only done 5, and then one where they kind of got a reprint with a new name with the extra 5, so you get all 10 of them, but I will let you know beforehand which ones are which. The first lands I will be talking about are the dual tap lands. There are 2 versions of this. There was originally the 5 in Invasion and then the 10 in Amonkhet. So I'll be going over the first, I'll be going over the 5 and then I'll be going over the 10, and here are the 5 on screen now. Coastal Tower, it's a land that's an uncommon. Coastal Tower enters the battlefield tapped and it taps for a white or blue. Salt Marsh, it's a land that's an uncommon. Salt Marsh comes into play tapped and it taps for a blue or black. Urbog Volcano, it is a land that's an uncommon. Urbog Volcano enters the battlefield tapped and it taps for a black or red. Shivan Oasis, it's a land that's an uncommon. Shivan Oasis enters the battlefield tapped and it taps for a red or green. Elfhame Palace, it is a land that's an uncommon. Elfhame Palace enters the battlefield tapped and it taps for a green or white. Now that invasion is done, I will be going on to the 10 in Amonkhet. Mending River, it's a land that's a common. Mending River enters the battlefield tapped and it taps for a white or blue. Submerged Boneyard, it's a land that's an uncommon. Submerged Boneyard enters the battlefield tapped and it taps for a blue or black. Cinder Barrens, it's a land that's a common. It enters the battlefield tapped and it taps for a red or a black. Timber Grove, it's a land that's a common. Timber Grove enters the battlefield tapped and it taps for a red or green. Tanquil Expanse is a land that's an uncommon. Tanquil Expanse enters the battlefield tapped and it taps for a green or a white. Forsaken Sanctuary, it is a land that is an uncommon. Forsaken Sanctuary enters the battlefield tap and it taps for a white or a black. Highland Lake, it's a land that's an uncommon. It enters the battlefield tapped and it taps for a blue or a red. Foul Orchard, it's a land that's an uncommon. Foul Orchard enters the battlefield tap and it taps for a black or green. Stone Quarry, it's a land that's an uncommon. Stone Quarry enters the battlefield tapped and it taps for a red or a white. Woodland Stream, it's a land that's common. Woodland Stream enters the battlefield tapped and it taps for a green or a blue. These are really good because they're easy-ish to get hold of. I have loads of them personally myself. However, if you are running a 2, 3, 4 or 5 colored deck, these are very good for the times you need. So like if you are playing, for example, a green-black deck and your opening hand has 3 swamps, and then you have this dual land that taps for a green or a black, and some of the cards in your hand have 1 green pip, playing that turn 1 helps you so much. You don't have to mulligan, you don't have to do anything. You get to keep your hand and play with the cards in your hand because of this dual land. They're very good for mana fixing. Second lands I will be talking about are the Thriving lands. These are lands that enter tapped. They tap of 1 mana of a certain colour that's printed on the card, but while they're entering the field, you get to name a colour and they get to tap for that colour. So example, if there is a land that taps for a white pip and you say blue, that then becomes a dual land for white and blue. These are personally the most hated land in my opinion. I hate these lands more than anything. I would rather put a basic in because it's one of those things where personally I've played these lands and have forgotten what colour I said, especially if you have more than one on the field. And then it's one of those things where I've seen people play it turn 1, 2 or 3, set a colour, and then turn 8 or 9 are saying a completely different colour. It's very difficult to kind of keep track, especially with the game of Commander, where there's 4 or more of yous playing and yous are trying to keep up with triggers and everything. Forgetting what colour you said on the land is very easy to do, and I just really despise these cards. They're actually probably the only lands I absolutely hate, but they're part of Magic. I have to talk about them for the Commander class, so here they are on screen now. Thriving Heath is a land that's a common. Thriving Heath enters the battlefield tapped. As Thriving Heath enters the battlefield, choose a colour other than white. Tap, add white or 1 mana of the chosen colour. Thriving Isle. It's a land that's a common. Thriving Isle enters the battlefield tapped. As Thriving Isle enters the battlefield, choose a colour other than blue. Tap, add blue or 1 mana of the chosen colour. Thriving Moor. It's a land that's a common. Thriving Moor enters the battlefield tapped. As Thriving Moor enters the battlefield, choose a colour other than black. Tap, add black or 1 mana of the chosen colour. Thriving Bluff. It's a land that's a common. Thriving Bluff enters the battlefield tapped. As Thriving Bluff enters the battlefield, choose a colour other than red. Tap, add red or 1 mana of the chosen colour. Thriving Grove. It's a land that's a common. Thriving Grove enters the battlefield tapped. As Thriving Grove enters the battlefield, choose a colour other than green. Tap, add green or 1 mana of the chosen colour. The third type of lands I'll be talking about are the Snow lands. They came in 2 variations. There was Cold Snap with the original 5, and then Kaldheim made 10 of them. Snow lands are just kind of like your dual tap lands. They enter the battlefield tapped. However, they're counted as a snow permanent, and in a few of the sets, snow permanents matter because it could be a card that when it enters the battlefield, it does something for the amount of snow permanents. So these are very good for decks that have that really rare subtype in them. Other than that, they just tap of 1 of 2 colours. So first I'll be talking about the Cold Snap ones, and here are the 5 on screen now. Boreal Shelf. It is a snow land that is an uncommon. Boreal Shelf comes into play tapped, and it taps for a white or blue. Frostmarsh is a snow land that is an uncommon. Frostmarsh enters the battlefield tapped, and it taps for a blue or black. Thresherhorn Sink. It is a snow land that's an uncommon. Thresherhorn Sink comes into play tapped, and it taps for a black or red. Highland Weld is a snow land that's an uncommon. Highland Weld comes into play tapped, and it taps for a red or green. Arctic Flats. It is a snow land that is an uncommon. Arctic Flats comes into play tapped, and it taps for a green or white. And then after that, there was the 10 from Kaldheim, which I will be talking about now. Glacial Floodplain. It is a snow land that's a plains or an island. It's a common. Taps for a white or blue. Glacial Floodplains enters the battlefield tapped. Ice Tunnel. It is a snow land that is an island or a swamp. It's a common. Taps for a blue or black. Ice Tunnel enters battlefield tapped. Sulphurous Mire. It is a snow land that is a swamp or a mountain. It is a common. Taps for a black or red. Sulphurous Mire enters the battlefield tapped. Highland Forest. It is a snow land that is a mountain or a forest. It's a common. It taps for a red or green. Highland Forest enters the battlefield tapped. Arctic Treeline. It is a snow land that is a forest or plains. It's a common. Taps for a green or white. Arctic Treeline enters the battlefield tapped. Snowfield Sinkhole. It is a snow land that is a plains or a swamp. It's a common. Taps for a white or black. Snowfield Sinkhole enters the battlefield tapped. Volatile Forge. It's a snow land that is an island or mountain. It's a common. Taps for a blue or red. Volatile Forge enters the battlefield tapped. Woodland Chasm. It is a snow land that is a swamp and a forest. It's a common. Taps for a black or green. Woodland Chasm enters the battlefield tapped. Alpine Meadow. It is a snow land, mountain, plains that's a common. It taps for a red or white. Alpine Meadow enters the battlefield tapped. Rhinewood Falls is a snowland that is a forest or an island. It's a common, taps for a green or blue. Rhinewood Falls enters the battlefield tapped. The next ones I'll be talking about are the artifact lands. These have only been in one set that I know of. When they enter the battlefield, they enter the battlefield tapped. They're indestructible and they tap for one of the two colours depending on which land you have. And they're also counted as artifact lands. So if you have an artifact deck where it matters how many artifacts you have on the field, these cards are really good because they're indestructible, so people cannot destroy them with targeted permanent spells. And also if you have cards that give you a special ability or give you certain resources for the amount of artifacts, these count too. I really love them. I think they're really cool. They're not really seen that well played. I don't really see many of them, but here they are on screen now. Razortide Bridge, it's an artifact land that is a common. Razortide Bridge enters the battlefield tapped. It's indestructible and taps for a white or blue. Mistvault Bridge, it's an artifact land that is a common. Mistvault Bridge enters the battlefield tapped. It's indestructible and taps for a blue or black. Drosphor Bridge, it's an artifact land that is a common. Drosphor Bridge enters the battlefield tapped. It's indestructible and taps for a black or red. Slagwoods Bridge, it's an artifact land that's a common. Slagwoods Bridge enters the battlefield tapped. It's indestructible and taps for a red or green. Thornglint Bridge, it's an artifact land that is a common. Thornglint Bridge enters the battlefield tapped. It's indestructible and taps for a green or white. Goldmire Bridge, it's an artifact land that is a common. Goldmire Bridge enters the battlefield tapped. It's indestructible and it taps for a white or black. Silverbluff Bridge, it's an artifact land that is a common. Silverbluff Bridge enters the battlefield tapped. It's indestructible and taps for a blue or red. Darkmoss Bridge, it's an artifact land that is a common. Darkmoss Bridge enters the battlefield tapped and it is indestructible and taps for a black or green. Rustvale Bridge, it's an artifact land that is a common. Rustvale Bridge enters the battlefield tapped. It's indestructible and taps for a red or white. Tanglepool Bridge, it's an artifact land that's a common. Tanglepool Bridge enters the battlefield tapped. It's indestructible and taps for a green or blue. The next lands I'll be talking about are the basic tap lands. These are pretty much the exact same as the original dual tap lands. However, dual tap lands are uncommon cards. So when you open a pack, they were kind of harder to get because they were in the uncommon section. These are now just common because it became one of those things that so many people had them. They played so much that they weren't as rare or as well played as most now lands are that are more rarer and do more kind of better than these. So then they downshifted them to a common. I forgot what the word was then. So they downshifted them to a common. So now people will be able to have more and they'll be played more in decks because they're not as great as they used to be. When it comes to the basic tap lands, I will have them on screen now. Idyllic Beachfront, it is a land that is a plains or an island. It is a common, it taps for a white or blue. Idyllic Beachfront enters the battlefield tapped. Contaminated Aquifer, it is a land, island, swamp that's a common. It taps for a blue or black. Contaminated Aquifer enters the battlefield tapped. Geothermal Bog, it's a land, swamp, mountain that is a common. It taps for a black or red. Geothermal Bog enters the battlefield tapped. Wooded Ridgeline is a land that is a mountain or a forest. It is a common. It taps for a red or green. Wooded Ridgeline enters the battlefield tapped. Radiant Grove, it is a land that is a forest and plains and it is a common. It taps for a green or white. Radiant Grove enters the battlefield tapped. Sunlit Marsh, it is a land that is a plains or a swamp. It's a common. It taps for a white or black. Sunlit Marsh enters the battlefield tapped. Molten Tributary is a land that is an island or mountain and it is a common. It taps for a blue or red. Molten Tributary enters the battlefield tapped. Haunted Mire, it is a land that is a swamp or in a forest. It's a common. It taps for a black or green. Haunted Mire enters the battlefield tapped. Sacred Peaks, it is a land that is a mountain or plains. It is a common. It taps for a red or a white. Sacred Peaks enters the battlefield tapped. Tangled Islet is a land that is a forest or an island. It is a common. It taps for a green or blue. Tangled Islet enters the battlefield tapped. The next ones are triple tap lands. They are lands that enter the battlefield tapped. However, they do not tap of one of two colours. They tap of one of three. So I will just be putting them on screen now because there's not really much to be able to talk about them other than they just tap for one of 3 colours. Seaside Citadel, it is a land that's an uncommon. Seaside Citadel enters the battlefield tapped, and it taps for a green, white or blue. Arcane Sanctum, it's a land that's an uncommon. Arcane Sanctum enters battlefield tapped, tap, add white, blue or black. Crumbling Necropolis, it's a land that's an uncommon. Crumbling Necropolis enters battlefield tapped, and you get a tap it to add a blue, black or red. Savage Lands, it's a land that's an uncommon. Savage Lands enters the battlefield tapped, and it taps for a black, red or green. Jungle Shrine, it's a land that's an uncommon. Jungle Shrine enters the battlefield tapped, and it taps for a red, green or white. Sandsteppe Citadel, it's a land that's an uncommon. Sandsteppe Citadel enters the battlefield tapped, and it taps for a white, black or green. Mystic Monastery, it is a land that's an uncommon. Mystic Monastery enters battlefield tapped, and it taps for a blue, red or white. Opulette Palace, it's a land that's an uncommon. Opulette Palace enters battlefield tapped, and it taps for a black, green or blue. Nomad Outpost, it's a land that's an uncommon. Nomad Outpost enters battlefield tapped, and it taps for a red, white or black. Fortia Bivouac, it's a land that's an uncommon. Fortia Bivouac enters the battlefield tapped, taps for a green, blue or red. And then finally there are the life gain tap lands, which is just pretty much the same as the original tap lands. However, when they enter the battlefield, you gain 1 life. Personally, I prefer these because it's one of those things where if you're going to have a tap land on the field anyway, why wouldn't you put one of these in? They are pretty much the exact same card, except for this gives you a better resource of 1 life. Now, I know 1 life doesn't seem much. However, it's one of those things that you might have a chance to win if you have 1 more life, because you can rather use it to draw an extra card if you're playing in black, or if someone all outs you, you might have 1 life left, and then on your turn you're able to win. It is a very slim chance. However, when it comes to Magic the Gathering, the more you put into your deck, the higher chance has to win. And if you have these lands in and you have the lands that give you 1 extra life spare, why would you not put it in? Because it's the exact same, but it helps you that little tiny bit. So when it comes to these, there is 2 sections of them. Section 1 is the first 5, which is Zendikar, and then there's the 10 in Khans of Tarkir. So first I'll be going over the 5 in Zendikar. Sedri Refuge, the land that's an uncommon. Sedri Refuge enters battlefield tapped. When Sedri Refuge enters battlefield, you gain a life. Tap for a white or blue. Jor Isle Refuge is a land that's an uncommon. Jor Isle Refuge enters battlefield tapped. When Jor Isle Refuge enters battlefield, you gain 1 life, and it taps for a blue or black. Akyum Refuge is a land that's an uncommon. Akyum Refuge enters battlefield tapped. When Akyum Refuge enters the battlefield, you gain a life, and it taps for a black or red. Khazad-dû Refuge is a land that's an uncommon. Khazad-dû Refuge enters battlefield tapped. When Khazad-dû Refuge enters the battlefield, you gain a life, and it taps for a red or green. Grey Pelt Refuge, it's a land that's an uncommon. Grey Pelt Refuge enters the battlefield tapped. When Grey Pelt Refuge enters the battlefield, you gain a life, and it taps for a green or white. And now that's done, I'll be going over the 10 in the Khans of Tarkir. Tranquil Cove, it's a land that's a common. Tranquil Cove enters the battlefield tapped. When Tranquil Cove enters the battlefield, you gain 1 life, and it taps for a white or blue. Dismal Backwater, it's a land that is a common. Dismal Backwater enters the battlefield tapped. When Dismal Backwater enters the battlefield, you gain a life, and it taps for a blue or black. Bloodfell Caves, it's a land that's common. Bloodfell Caves enters the battlefield tapped. When Bloodfell Caves enters the battlefield, you gain 1 life, and it taps for a black or red. Rugged Highlands, it's a land that's a common. Rugged Highland enters the battlefield tapped. When Rugged Highland enters the battlefield, you gain 1 life, and it taps for a red or green. Blossoming Sands is a land that's a common. Blossoming Sands enters the battlefield tapped. When Blossoming Sands enters the battlefield, you gain 1 life, and it taps for a green or white. Scorched Barrens, it's a land that's a common. Scorched Barrens enters the battlefield tapped. When Scorched Barrens enters the battlefield, you gain 1 life, and it taps for a white or black. Swiftwater Cliffs, it's a land that's a common. Swiftwater Cliffs enters the battlefield tapped. When Swiftwater Cliffs enters the battlefield, you gain 1 life, and it taps for a blue or red. Jungle Hollow, it is a land that's a common. Jungle Hollow enters the battlefield tapped. When Jungle Hollow enters the battlefield, you gain 1 life, and it taps for a black or green. Windscrad Crag, it's a land that's a common. Windscrad Crag enters the battlefield tapped. When Windscrad Crag enters the battlefield, you gain 1 life, and it taps for a red or white. Thornwood Falls is a land that's a common. Thornwood Falls enters the battlefield tapped. When Thornwood falls, enters the battlefield, you gain 1 life and it taps for a green or blue. So now that we've gone over all the tap lands in Magic the Gathering and you kind of have a gist of what they do and how to use them, let me know in the comments down below which ones are your favourite, which land out of all the ones I've mentioned today is your favourite. In next class we will be talking about guild lands. So hopefully, I think from the top of my head, that is going to be a really big class. So hopefully you enjoy this class and hopefully you are excited for the next one. And as always, remember to like, subscribe, follow, comment, follow me on all my social media, share it into Magic the Gathering groups or share it to friend groups in general. I love making these videos. I'm having a lot of fun and I would love to see my community grow. So as always, please like, subscribe and all of that, and I will see you in the next video.